Welcome, everybody. We've got a really, really interesting discussion today around managing on-site health and safety with apps. What do you think about health and safety, Scott?
Well, it's always been a bit of a hot topic, and we're hearing more and more about it now with people that have got claims against them or people that are wanting to manage it a bit better and be a bit more responsible as well.
Yeah, there's always been a pretty big responsibility on business owners and workers around managing health and safety. But I guess what's brought this to the point of discussion for us is that technology is evolving. We've got a whole bunch of different options when it comes to health and safety these days, and we've got customers coming to us with a bunch of different things. And so we thought it'd be great to have a discussion around what are the options that you as a business owner will have when it comes to managing health and safety within your business, specifically around technology. So first thing I'll say is that we are absolutely not work health and safety experts. We have a bunch of people that we work with that are, and that we can refer you to that can help with advice around compliance and all that stuff, because it's a pretty important piece of the business. But what we do know is that we've seen lots and lots and lots and lots of businesses come to us with different things at different stages, and I guess we break it into two main categories. We've got businesses that come to us with health and safety stuff in place. So they might have some paper documents, they might have some procedures, they might have some content, and they're using it in a traditional paper-based analog manner. And then we've got customers that don't have anything. And for those that don't have anything, we can put you in touch with someone that can help you get stuff in place to make sure that you are compliant, because it's very important. You can't just go and borrow someone's document or download something off the internet that's free and expect that it's going to be right. So yeah, it's a bit of a touchy one. But for those that already have documents in place and have invested a bit of time and effort into getting some work health and safety components into your business, for those guys, it's around how do I take what I already have and make it electronic or incorporate it into the business technology platform that I already have. And we've also got quite a few clients that come to us with work health and safety software in place, because it's easy to see ads on social media or websites, or go searching for things and sign up for something. But then it's about how do I incorporate that into my process with my tools, with my job management system or my construction management system or whatever it is that I have. So it's absolutely not one size fits all. I wish it was. But then that's why we have a business, because that's what we specialize in. It's about how do we guide people around what this stuff does and how it works and how to build it into their business.
I think one thing you touched on, Clinton, which is probably quite important, because we have had people say, "Oh, surely you guys have got copies of safety documents you've worked with before," and you mentioned about going online and finding some documentation that you can work with and then trying to use it. If you're going to go to the trouble of trying to actually find documentation online, you might as well do it once and do it properly and make sure it's compliant. Because if you're going to be starting to fill out these forms and documentation on site, and you have some sort of incident happen, and then it does go to end up being a case, and what you've filled out is not correct, well, you've just wasted your time. So making sure those documents and what you're doing is compliant is key.
So in terms of requirements, there are a bunch of different things that vary state to state and vary business to business. So what builders need is very different to what subbies need. So but what do you see, Scott, with some of the things that customers bring to us?
Well, there's a few different things, because there is people that just need a better way to manage their swims and risk assessments and their WNHS requirements. But we also see a lot of people, because we ask the question, about safety, and one of the answers is, "Oh, I know I should be doing it, but I'm not." And I don't think that comes down to negligence or anything like that, but it's just it's a bit of a can of worms once you get into it. So having that sort of guidance and someone that can give you that knowledge, like Clinton mentioned before, speaking to a safety expert to get that knowledge is really, really important. So some people have got their swims and risk assessments but are not using them. Some people are using them, but a bit of an archaic way. Instead of having an electronic form, they might be, printing out a copy and filling it out manually, then filing it away, or using a Word document or something like that. So that's one of the key things that we see. Um, the other thing is that some of the software that's out there will actually have the functionality to manage the safety, and manage the documents that they've got, but they're not really using it, or they haven't been shown how to use it properly. So they're not using it. And then, of course, it's only as good as the people that are filling out the information, and getting staff or on-site workers to do that is quite important as well. And this is not being used, so they could have the functionality in their software, but not even know that it's there or exists, and still using that hard copy to record it.
That's a really common one. Again, like I said at the start, we're starting to see a lot of improvements in software that can help with managing work health and safety, whether it's a dedicated work health and safety module that specifically has functions around site inductions and toolbox talks and whatever, or a simple function like a forms feature where I can take a paper document and turn it into an electronic form, which can then be filled out on a phone or a device. We'll show a little bit of a demonstration of that in just a minute. But it's the I guess the improvements in the software and that functionality that's in there that people don't necessarily know how to use.
Yeah. And look, we've seen that we've seen the worst case scenarios as well, like where it's someone's had an accident on site, and the business has been taken to court, and they've got a case against them. We had one recently where it was a building company who there was someone that had an accident on site, and it wasn't even on a part of the site that they'd built. It was an existing structure, let's say, on the site. The person had fallen down the structure, and now they had this case against them. And one thing which was really sort of surprising to me was, of course, the business was insured, but as soon as the incident happened, his insurer would only cover the existing projects that they had, and so they wouldn't cover any more of his new projects coming up. And so this poor bloke had to go out and actually get another insurer, and it almost seemed like now that he'd had an incident on site, until at least it was concluded, he was having to pay thousands of dollars of excess per week just to have that insurance cover. So and I suppose it shows the importance of. I mean, you're probably still going to have to go through this process, but if you've got that evidence and you've done the right thing and you can bring that up electronically, and prove that, it's really going to be a savior for people as well.
To go a little bit deeper into the technology side of things, there's a whole bunch of different tools that are out there. So there are dedicated, standalone work health and safety platforms that focus wholly and solely on managing the work health and safety component. So it'll have employee records with training and certifications and license management. It'll have inductions. It'll have site-specific inductions. It'll have all of the forms and the tools that are required around filling out things like swims and risk assessments. And it's standalone, so it just does that piece of the puzzle. And so it'll hold its own information, and then you'll use your what we call operational software alongside that. So your job management software or your construction management software if you're a builder. And sometimes they talk to each other. So that's something that we're starting to see change a bit, is that there's integrations that are starting to happen between those standalone systems and the operational software. Then the other side of that would be built-in functionality like forms that I mentioned before, where we've got a system that we use to run our projects or our jobs, and that system has a function built into it that allows us to fill out a form, but it won't necessarily have those specific functions around inductions and site-specific information and like incident reports and I guess the more detailed functions. And that's quite a common thing that we see with software in this space, is that you'll have a piece of software that wholly and solely focuses on one particular piece and does it really, really well, or we'll have a more basic entry-level function built into a system. And so it's a matter of making a decision on which one do we need? Do we need to go down the path of that full-blown software, or can we just get away with, not get away with, but is a basic forms function enough for us to be able to get a worker to fill something out on site and it saves against the job, and then we're maybe taking that document and saving it somewhere else? So there's a decision that's got to be made there. And just as a really quick demonstration, I'll show my screen for a moment and I'll give you a quick demo, a quick look at what an electronic form looks like, because this is a bit of a whole new world for some people. They've always been used to filling out their paper forms. And so when we talk about an electronic form, it sometimes needs to be demonstrated for it to make sense on what it actually does. So if I share my screen, so this is just a very, very basic form with a few questions, because a form is essentially just a series of questions that you can answer on a device, and the answers to those questions then get taken and put onto a document template, and it gets turned into a file, typically a PDF file, and saved against a job. So this is a really, really basic form with just a few questions, which are examples of either a text-based question. Oh, there we go. It's either a text-based question where we've got a field where we can put some information in. This is a text field. I'm just filling it out with the keyboard, and it might be just a single line of text or a multi-line of text. Testing. And then as we go down, we get into different types of questions. So these are multiple choice questions. Yes, no, not applicable. And these fields are required, so I have to fill them out. And these kinds of form functions can be made standalone within the system, where you can just go and find the form and fill it out, or they can be made to be part of a workflow. This is where the form function as part of your job management system or your construction management system is important, where when I log in or check into my job at the start of the day, we might have a requirement that says, okay, you have to fill in a form. So it's enforced compliance. Whereas if we've got a standalone system, that's a different app. I've got to go out of the app that I use to log my timesheets, and I've got to open up another app and fill something in. And it's like, it's not enforced. So like any of the tools that we work with, there's pros and cons of everything. And it's a matter of having a discussion about what do we actually need. But I'm just going through filling in the questions. So I'll just answer yes to all these things. Are there any other potential risks? I'll say no on that one. And then this particular form just has a single signature field. So I can just sign on the screen with my finger, but forms can incorporate different types of questions, check boxes, you can have photos, we can have multiple signatures. They're a free-for-all. They're custom built. They can be custom built. And then once I've filled in all the questions, I generate the document, and it takes all the answers to those questions and it drops it onto this document template that we've built in the background. And it's just got some basic information about the business, and it's got the answers to the questions. So there's all our checkboxes there. And like I said, this is just a really, really basic form, but these are completely customizable. And so we've built SWIMs, JSAs, toolbox talks, site inspections, incident reports, you name it. It's a custom form builder. So we can build anything. We can build whatever is necessary. And then this is part of the job management system, where when this is filled out, it's then saved as a PDF file against that job record. And we've now got the record there in the job with the date and who filled it in. So it's like a bit of a history, a chronological history of what's gone on. So they're quite powerful when they're set up and they're used in the right way. But it's not a full-blown work health and safety platform that does all the other stuff I was talking about around management of the incidents and that kind of stuff.
And I think it's something that it's about being proactive. It's about being compliant, but it's also about looking after staff as well, and creating that safety culture within the business. We went to a construction summit recently where they've done a lot of research into this whole safety piece, and it's really interesting with some of the younger generations that are coming through now. This is a requirement for them to come and work for businesses that they are safety conscious and they are taking the right steps. And we're hearing all day long about shortage of good staff, shortage of staff, not being able to get enough people. We've got the work, but we don't have the people. And if you're trying to attract and keep people, it's quite an important thing, especially with the younger generations coming through. They've got more, they put more emphasis on what a company does, the culture, and also that safety culture within a company as well.
That safety culture, that's a really good segue, Scott, because if we talk about the tools that are available these days, and there's lots of different companies advertising things, safety culture is one of the tools that we work with. So that's a software that has a forms function built into it with training management and customizable forms, but they've also got a bunch of pre-built swims and risk assessments and stuff that can be used. So that's one of the options. There's things like site docs. There are things like Hazard Co. And they all vary. They've all got their own pros and cons. And then we've got some of the job and the operating platforms that are starting to build more safety specific functions into them. So a construction software called Builder Price has released a work health and safety module. So it's got the site specific plan, it's got the site inductions with QR code to scan on. So there's a whole range of things that are available now, and like any of the clients that we talk to, it's about finding the right fit for your business and what's going to work with your workflow and what your requirements are.
So a lot of different options out there, a lot of things to look at and make a choice from. And it can be a little bit confusing because if you look online, the systems are going to be, or the companies are going to be, sort of spruiking their product as well and saying it can do this, this, and this. And that's why it sort of puts an emphasis on the importance of, okay, which tool is going to be best suited for me and why? Why is it going to be best suited for me? And is it going to cover, all my requirements? Because one of the things that we see day in day out, and it goes both ways. We'll get companies that come to us and they've made a choice based on what they've read or what they've been told, and they either go one way where it's just not enough, just doesn't give them the functionality or fulfill the requirements that they need, or it's an absolutely a complete overkill. It's just that they didn't need a system to that sort of size, or it's just it's completely, they might be using 20% of it when they didn't really need that in the first place. So just puts that importance on speaking to people that actually know these systems and show you the different ways that they work, so you can make a bit of a comparison and then have an educated choice on what you're going to go for. And that's one of the things that we do at TradiePad as well.
Because quite often what works in theory doesn't work in practice. So you might be sold the dream on the website or by the salesperson for the software company, but when it comes down to it, the practicality of that particular system actually being used by your team, it may not work. So what has absolutely changed this whole space, though, is the fact that we've got the mobile devices now that can be used for doing this stuff. And it's a lot more common now that people are using the devices for work-related things, especially if you've got a job management system. But that's definitely something that you have to consider, is that you're going to have your workers using an app on their device for work purposes, whether it's a company-owned device or it's their own personally owned device. But it's a game changer because it means that they've got this tool in their pocket that can let them fill this thing out electronically or capture information or capture an incident or whatever. It just comes down to developing those workflows for your business and everybody knowing what they need to do. And this is where training comes into the picture, and training for everybody so that they know what the requirements are. So we'll always talk through with the specific business that we're working with. How do you do things now? If we had an app that could do this stuff, would it be practical? Would it work? Who's going to oversee it? Who's managing it and monitoring it and keeping it up to date? So there's a bunch of stuff that goes into making a decision. And of course, what's the existing tools that you're using in your business? If you've got an existing job management software or construction management software, how is this all going to fit into the picture? So it's just a conversation and an education. It's a chance for us to educate you about how it all kind of fits together, and then come to a conclusion on what's going to be the best fit and why.
Just to add on to that a little bit, and you don't need to overcook it straight away as well. That's one thing that we say at TradiePad is that it's not. Every business is a little bit different from the next. So it doesn't matter if you start off using the technology in a quite a basic way by even capturing images of information. And then slowly as you bring the team on, you start to transition and train them into so sort of more accurate ways of using the software. So it's Clinton said it before, and it's absolutely true. It's okay. Well, it works in theory, but is it practical for the human beings in the business to be able to be doing it? What are they doing now? How can we transition them towards the best way of doing things? So it's not a one size fits all. It's really just listening to the business, their needs, where they're at, and then suggesting a solution to start with. I've worked for TradiePad for coming up 9 years, and just recently coined a saying is to move fast with software, you've actually got to go slower, and that's all about building that foundation, bringing that knowledge into the staff and the people in the business, and slowly building up and adding on as you go, because you really need to understand the basics and the fundamentals, and you've got to be using it, because if you're not using it, it's useless. So yeah, that's important.
So, like anything, like any of our discussions, it all starts with initial conversation about what you're doing and how you're doing it, and see if we can help out, and then we go from there. So, feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to help.